Hello, I am Elena Phelan. I am here to talk to you about books. Yes, I am in my pajamas, my Batman pajamas. No, they're not really underoos. Yes, I wish they were underoos. They'd be a little bit more comfortable, I think. This I got, it's a set I got at Target a really long time ago. I could not bring myself in this sudden and ridiculous heat that we got to, I don't know, I'd say primp, but honestly, even doing like the bare minimum is beyond me today. You are lucky that you are not trying to figure out what my words are behind the raging sound of my fan, because even though it was really hot out, I still haven't turned on my air conditioner. The reason for this is really just because we have this really long house, this like rancher that was like extended, and it has 2 air conditioning units, and one of them is, it's not broken, but it's not broken. So I'd really like to have someone fix it before we turn one side of the house on, because that's not great. Anyway, so we have the fan on for now. I have a fan on for now. There is no we here. I don't know what my roommate does. If she has a fan on, I don't hear it. I don't know how she could. She tends to be more affected by heat than I am. And yeah, so I turned the fan off just to record. You're welcome. I mean, I guess. I wanted to talk about just a couple of titles that I read in the past week. One of them is coming out, Tuesday. So I wanted to rush and make a video about it to prove that I read it before it came out. Cool. It was an interesting one. It was a really interesting one, actually. I don't think I'm going to do it any justice because, of course, by the time that I get a camera in front of my face, I'm like 5-6 books ahead. But it's Okwege Emezi's new book, You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, which I'm told is a Florence and the Machine reference. Oh, I ate a bunch of Oreos, and I'm like, if I open my mouth too wide, there's gonna be like chocolate all over. It's a great night to talk about a bunch of books. Yeah, so I read this book, and so the author said, they straight up said, this is a romance. But I knew that she was the main character. She's dating someone, and she ends up meeting like his dad. And it becomes a thing, like a deal. And so I'm like, what is the romance here? The dad? Now I went into it, that was the information that I had. Cool. To me, that sounds less like a romance and more like a Victoria Holt novel, which I would say was categorized as a romance when I was growing up. It was categorized on the side of romance that wasn't like a harlequin that you could grab off of, the shelf or have mailed to you, but it was more along the lines of like, still fell into the category of romance. But it's not like a romance in the way that, you would think a romance novel is, or paced. The way that we tend to think of romances is very structured nowadays. And so I start reading this book, and the first 30% is very enmeshed in the grief process and how to sort of get back into dating as a widow? Like, what is the path to that? And you know, there's some really great just feeling in there, not just about grief. But it's a little bit of hookup culture. It's a little bit of like, how do you start something real? What does real feel like? Truly, every time I talk. This is a cattail. There's something so very real about it that makes other books that I've read with widows in it feel very fake. I think that that's really interesting, actually, is that this book made me feel that other depictions of grief fell very shallow. And goes to show, I think, that there is a difference between writing a trope and writing an experience, either that you've had or that you can channel because you know something, either that thing or something akin to it. So the first third of the book does not feel like a romance. It feels like a literary book on grief. Like, it feels like you are delving into this woman's process of understanding what it is that she wants, what she's looking for, what scares her, what is easy for her, what's hard for her. And then it completely changes and feels a lot like a romance novel. Like, a lot. There's something almost fantastical about having this, like, abrupt switch, because it does feel abrupt. It's like, oh, wait a second. I don't want to say too much about it, but I really actually enjoyed the book more than I thought I was going to with that 30%-ish tone switch. I thought, oh, well, wait, I was really enjoying, this sort of sad book, and now it doesn't feel exactly the same way, and it's like, well, what do you want? Do you want this character to be sad forever? Or do you want this character to have new and different feelings? And it's like, well, no, I want her to be happy. Well, then shut up. Shut up and let her have her complicated feelings in a complicated situation and look and see how it resolves. Okay, I will. So that was me reading that. So was it a romance? I would say it was a romance, but not a romance novel. But it is a romance novel. So I read this comic book series, 3 volumes, and if you have Hoopla, it's on there. If you don't have Hoopla, that's fine too. It's called Crowded, recommended by Ann Comics on Twitter, and I loved it. Loved the whole thing so much. It is basically, there is a crowdfunding site that is legalized murder, and once the crowdfund goes live, you have 30 days to not be killed, and if you can make it through those 30 days, then it's basically that's it, you're fine, you're good. but like you can hire like a bodyguard and all this other stuff. There's like all these rules and things that have basically just come up as a result of this site. But like, that's not the point. The point is the characters. The characters are so much fun. They're so interesting. The way they solve their problems is really fun. If you're watching this, you either already know who I am, or you have watched a couple of these and you're starting to get an idea of who I am. You will understand the way that I love conflict to resolve is just people talking about things that are reasonable, and not dragging out ridiculous things or putting tension in where there doesn't need to be tension. And that's one of the things I really like about this title. They don't do that at all. It also has one of the cutest dogs in all of comic books. And I'm about to talk about one of the other cutest dogs in all of comic books. So, yeah. Ooh, I don't know which one I would vote for if there were like a contest. It would be really, really tough. I love this fictional dog. I love these characters, even when they are being irritating. And I really like that there are so many writers right now, especially people who are writing like queer titles, who are leaning into this idea of messiness. And it's not because I want all of these characters to be annoying or irritating or whatever. It's because I think that human beings are flawed, and I think that we can't live in this world without understanding that there will be some people that we are endearing to and some people who we annoy. And so the end result of all of this is that we're seeing more characters from creators, especially younger creators and especially younger queer creators, where these people get to be flawed and you choose whether or not you like them. They're not all good, they're not all bad. I think that there is going to be maybe some like backlash from people my age, because we were raised on like perfect characters who have like either one flaw or and that flaw is usually like arrogance or arrogance. Like, honestly, you know, that was a very 80s thing. Or like, we're good, but do we really have to be the chosen one or whatever? And so I think that this is sort of a generational thing. It's like, instead of just being like, oh, look, I know that I'm super great, but like, do I really have to go save the world? Instead, we're seeing more characters who are like, oh God, I know I'm really irritating, but I think I might be worthy of love and like friends and maybe my family. And if they don't treat me well, then maybe not my family or this specific person I was dating or this friend group that treats me terribly. I think that's a great thing, and I'm happy to see it. So Crowded made me feel like that. Even though that's not necessarily what's going on, I feel like it's just seeing more characters who give me that feeling like I'm seeing a generation of characters who don't need to be perfect, who don't need to be even necessarily perfectly likable or even standardly likable or even necessarily likable. Like, I could definitely see people not liking every single character in this, and it's okay. But I do. I don't even know that I would have liked these characters, this type of character, this style of character. I don't even know that I would have liked them 10 years ago. I don't think I would have had room in my heart, because I was raised on these perfect characters, to like them 10 years ago. So I'm wondering like what changed. I think it's just like having a kid grow up and like paying attention to like what my kid is into, and not shutting myself out from like the creators and that are like any kind of creators that are like my kid's age. You know what I mean? Because if I do that, I mean, there's the whole I may as well curl up and die thing, but that's not true. I could just listen to the same like 80s and 90s music forever. That's fine. I have DVDs I haven't even watched yet. But it would create a gap between us, I think, for me to not want to understand the differences between our generations. And while that wouldn't be unusual, what it would do is it wouldn't create just a gap between us, like emotionally. It would create an empathy gap. And I'm not into that. Anyway, I'm getting way off track, but I think it's important for everyone to pay attention, because this isn't just comic books. These aren't just novels. These aren't just trends, right? These are reflections of what people are feeling, what they're interested in. They're reflections of themselves. But they're also reflections of their anxieties, their worries, their ideas of utopias are reflections of the dystopia, feelings of dystopia that they have right now. But there's a really great dog. All right, speaking of really great dogs, I caved because even though I have not gotten to the bookstore yet, I have a friend who's going to go pick up the book for me this week, but I haven't gotten there yet to pick up my copy of Galaxy the Prettiest Star. It is on Hoopla, so I did take it out and I did read it. Now, I will say that because the author is local and someone that I was following, like, so not a friend, but like absolutely someone I have followed on social media for a long time, I definitely felt like I had more of a reaction to the book than I had like a reading on the book. You can't turn all the critiquey parts of your brain on when you're just like, I'm so proud of this person for getting this here. You know what I mean? Like it's all emotional. You're just proud and you're pleased that the world worked in the way that it should have. You know, like the world felt just for a moment. A talented writer got to put out a book, the book of her heart, right? Yeah. And like there it was in front of you. You get to read it after waiting for it for 2 years. And you can't, it's not like you can't focus on it. It's just that you can't look at it with a really critical eye. You can only take it in, right? And I'll read it again when I have the actual paper book in my hand. But there were a couple of things that I wanted to say about it. One, it's actually really, really great. Now, I know a lot of people who put out books and their books have gone from, oh my God, I cried through the whole thing, which is The One True Me and You, right? By Remy K. England. Oh my God, I cried through that whole book. Like, so proud of M.K. England for putting out a book that is just that amazing, right? So you have like, that is the like fantastic end of the acquaintance spectrum of putting out books that you are just super proud of. You know, I also on that end is the book that has my name on it, right, is technically the first book that we put out is Kevin's book. Kevin wrote a draft. It did not change significantly. Even though it has my name on it, it did not change significantly. I essentially edited it and did a little writing in it here and there. But enough to get enough that Kevin felt that I should put my name on it. But it's Kev's book. So proud of that book. And this book. right? Those all go towards my top amazing books. Sometimes you're just like, that's a good book. I'm really proud of you. You got that book out. And I mean, sometimes it's just because the book isn't like your jam. Like, oh, congratulations on your like history of pine trees across America or whatever, you know, like I made that up. But like, you know, I have friends who do all sorts of cool things. And I'm very happy for them. But this book is amazing. Like it's actually really amazing. It's very well written. It's very, very well written. And I have to say that free comic book day preview, I'm really, really disappointed in it now that I have read the actual book. It explains so much of why it was both like pretty and nice to look at, but incredibly confusing. It is not the beginning of the book like I thought. Like I thought it wasn't, because it doesn't make any sense for it to be the beginning of the book. It mentions a character that like is not introduced in there at all, so we're all just like, what, who, what? It was you get a sense of the book from it, but I've never seen a free comic book preview like that. It's almost always the first couple pages of the book. I don't know. I don't know why they did it like that. So the character, Taylor, is a princess who is trapped in the body of, you know, a human boy. She has to hide like this because she is, basically, she has to be in hiding because she's being hunted for, essentially. And this is the best way for her to hide. Except she hates it. She loathes it. She is in a body that is unnatural to her, and it is uncomfortable, and it physically hurts her. And also, somehow, over the course of 2 years, I like made up a thing in my head. I don't know where I got this idea about one of the characters. I completely misunderstood who she was supposed to be. I don't know how, but I did. So whatever I've said in the past, I was wrong. So that was really interesting. So it's really interesting how you can like follow an author. And now admittedly, I was trying to avoid like getting too much information because I don't like to know a lot of information about stuff. So that's a precarious balance, trying to like follow and support an author, like a local author, and trying to be like, go you, but then also like not wanting to know anything about the work before it comes out so that you can, you know, enjoy it on its own, and then still come up with like the wrong preconceived notions. Yeah, anyway, but yeah, no, it's so good, and I really hope DC recognizes that. So the pre-order numbers look really good. If you look at like where it's charting on Amazon, and that's just like Amazon. Like I didn't buy it on Amazon. I bought it in my local bookstore, and I'm hoping that that ends up looking even better somehow. If I think the numbers feed, right? They feed into somebody. I don't know if I don't think it's DC themselves, but like DC has or does DC not use their distributor anymore? I think, didn't they like drop their distributor and now they're doing their own stuff? So they'll get their own numbers, I hope. And they'll realize how well this book is actually doing, because not only is it like being ordered by all these libraries, it was also had a huge amount of pre-orders. So hopefully those Amazon numbers fold into all the other people, which fold into the libraries, and then DC will see how well this book is selling. And, you know, that this beautiful trans metaphor is fan-frickin-tastic. Fan-frickin-tastic. Yeah, it's so good. I think I was so excited I couldn't cry. I thought I was gonna cry through the whole thing, and instead I just had that like excitement where like the tears are behind your eyes, but they don't like quite fall. I'm just like, and the dog is so okay. So like, I did not think that I was gonna love the dog as much. What the heck? Why did I have everything so backwards? Here I am thinking like, it's just a dog. It's fine. Nope, that dog, like, I don't know, 2 seconds in, I'm like, I love this dog. Arceus is the best. Oh my God. Such a fun book. All right, when do we get this TV show? I would really like this TV show. That would be a fun show. All right, just keep giving Jadzia money. Just keep handing it to her. Oh, so I also read Infidel, which is like a horror comic. So the interesting thing about this, right, is that it's supposed to be, okay, so like they try to do jump scares. I've never seen anyone really try to do jump scares in a horror comic before. It feels like it's really cool that they try to do this. I don't know that it's always effective. There are certainly times that it is creepy as hell, but it does not make me jump, right? Because there's a particular feeling of like what you need to be startled, right? Where your eyes need to go. And the way that I read is so fast that I don't know that I necessarily, because I read basically, you know, text box to text box, bubble to bubble. I don't really dwell on the art. I'm really just taking it in from text box to text box. It's a terrible way to read comics, I know. Sorry. It was an interesting story. It was really interesting. But there were they were playing with some really cool ideas. Not like in the writing and with the art, which I thought was really cool. My roommate was like, you know how that would work for me to do like holographic technology, and so that if you turned it a little, you would see it jump out at you. And I'm like, okay, that would work. That would absolutely work. But yeah, no, there was one that I think really, it didn't get me as a jump scare, but it got me as a like, it got me viscerally tense. Yeah, it wasn't like a jump scare, but it was like half a jump scare. Yeah. Otherwise, I've just read, you know, like a couple more comics. It's been really comic heavy around here because of my insomnia, and the weather's been awful, so I've been getting bad migraines. I read Eat the Rich, which technically, I think the trade comes out tomorrow, or maybe a new trade comes out. I'm not really sure. I was seeing the issues on Hoopla, and I thought the trade came out already. Sometimes I think Hoopla gets the trade before the paperback or something, because when I go to fill out the, I have a spreadsheet. When I go to fill out my spreadsheet, like the dates are always like 2 or 3 weeks from now, and I'm like, really? But it says, I got an email, you know, like the publishers send out emails, and they're like, do you want a PDF of the trade? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I didn't want to read it for the longest time because I was seeing the issues on Hoopla, and I didn't want to read it for the longest time because I was like, oh, cannibals, that could go either way. It could be like, ugh. And then I realized it's like, Sarah Gailey wrote it, and I'm like, oh, wait. No, they're great. No, let me read that. And it turns out it is really great. However, you can tell that it's written by someone who is who usually writes like novels and short stories, because the end does have a very like short story-esque feel to it. Like, we have had the climax and now the resolution. Write it quickly. People on Goodreads were like, the end moves really fast, and I'm like, yeah, because it's blatantly like a short story. It doesn't feel like, it feels more like a short story that was turned into a comic than something that was written as a comic. I don't know which. I didn't look it up, actually. And then I was picking up some of the bonus borrows, which are like, so they do that every quarter, Hoopla, where you can just like take out from a list of things. It feels like there's a lot less this time, like a lot less. There's some like Marvel titles and DC titles in there. I grabbed the Kelly Thompson Captain Marvel. I did not love it. In fact, I thought it was part of a crossover at first because it was so confusing at one point. I don't think it is. I think it just has some weird pacing to it. It just gets really confusing at one point. Yeah, I mean, once I figured it out, but didn't love it. I honestly feel like I would have if it had gone on a lot. Like if they had like leaned into it and just let it be and let it go on for a really long time, I think I probably would have been into it. But yeah, it felt disjointed because the setup's great, the turn's weird, and feels like it's leaning into some sort of crossover event where you don't know what the hell's going on. And then you're like, oh wait, it's not. Okay, I get it now. I know where I am. I'm caught up. Let's go. And then by then you're like almost half over and you're like, oh, this, I don't know. I mean, it feels like, you know, your usual change the status quo, but don't worry, it'll all reset at the end kind of a deal. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. It's why I don't read a lot of comics. It's because I can't stand things not changing. That's why I don't read a lot of like Marvel and DC comics. Is I can't stand events, and I can't stand these world-shattering events where like nothing changes except somebody dies, but don't worry, they'll be back like next week. The whole beginning is like, Rhodey, you were dead, you're back. It's fine. The whole thing seems to be just a setup for a new haircut. I don't get it.